Welcome to the future. PBS Digital.
If I told you of a frontier that had been discovered, you'd probably think I was talking about history. It's a pretty common belief that all of Earth has already been explored. But in fact, there are still places on Earth untouched by man. This small hole leads to one such place, Kartchner Caverns. Modern-day pioneers first squeezed through this tiny passage 25 years ago. By venturing into Kartchner Caverns, we'll find things that aren't so different from those found by the pioneers of long ago. Surprise, mystery, and enchantment.
You will experience on visiting Kartchner one of the top 10 caves mineralogically in the world.
It felt like a dream to us, like we were dreaming.
Funding for this program has been provided by ASARCO Incorporated, celebrating a century of accomplishment as an international producer of copper. ASARCO, producing the metals we all need, respecting the environment we all value. And by the Arizona Game and Fish Heritage Fund, conserving Arizona's diverse wildlife resources.
As we looked down through this crack in the bottom of the sinkhole, why there was this breeze coming up into our faces, and we knew. I mean,
Cave breezes
it was a cave breeze.
are sort of this moist, bat guano-y kind of smell. It's just not
fragrance,
any breeze.
it's ambrosia. It may not sound
wonderful.
like that to most listeners, but to us, we said, there's something here.
There's something there, yes.
There's a top 10 list of caves in the world mineralogically, and Kartchner is on that list.
We get to go on the opening day. Yeah, grand opening. And then that's the one where Gary Tennant and Randy Tuff went in.
On the first day, there'll be more people in Kartchner Caverns than have ever been in before.
Did you come down from St. Paul?
Yes.
For this?
I flew in, yes.
Oh, really?
And
You flew down from St. Paul?
is his birthday present.
Oh.
Well, behind that chain link fence is the original sinkhole entrance where Gary and Randy, remember the guys in the video, the discoverers? That's where they entered the cave back in 1974, and that's where they discovered Kartchner Caverns. So let's go ahead and head on up to the tunnels.
The cave was minding its own business. It didn't ask to be discovered. We found it. We were the only ones who knew about it. By the time it was announced as a park, I don't know, a few dozen people knew about it and had been here. But that total period of secrecy from the public was about 14 years.
It is very much like having a child and how you immediately changes your life, and you have to care for it and provide for it, and you really never stop caring about it.
Some relatives of this recently discovered child included the Kartchners. This is the family the cave is named for, the ones who owned the land. And they too had to carry the heavy secret. They feared if word got out, there would be a media frenzy, something the cave wasn't ready for, until today.
We've been studying caves for a long time.
Yeah. Like stalactites and stalagmites. I want to see Kubla Khan. Yeah, I want to see it too. And I want
This is about as close to the ceiling as any of the tours are going to get in Kartchner Caverns. And up here you can actually see the formations growing. If you stand here long enough, you can watch the water dripping from the ends of each of these formations. I know I've been in this cave 1,000 times, and each time I come, I see something different. This is an area of totem formations. In fact, this is the crystal totem. It's created a lot like you would do a sand castle on the beach, where you would drip drops of wet sand in order to create a stalactite, if you will. This particular totem was created a drop of water at a time. And the farther that drop of water fell, the bigger the splash, creating a broader base. And as it grew to the ceiling, that water dropped less and splashed less, creating a smaller, thinner formation at the top. Even Randy and Gary come here now that we have some of the house lights on and see things they never saw when we're using just their carbide lamps. So there's always something new to see.
Kartchner Caverns is in the foothills of the Whetstone Mountains, about 40 miles southeast of Tucson, Arizona. The cave is a medley of rooms, 2 large and 26 smaller, connected by passageways nearly 2.5 miles long. Today's visitors walk through large tunnels blasted through solid rock. Nature wasn't quite so kind to the pioneers who discovered the cave. They squirmed in on their bellies.
After the crawlway, after we were into the main part of the cave, it was pretty clear that no one else had been there. I guess we didn't really believe, until we explored essentially the whole cave, we didn't really know that nobody had been there. But every place we went, there were no footprints, there was no sign of vandalism, there was no sign of other entrances. We knew we had found something no one else had found. We knew that we needed to develop a plan to protect the cave, that with the discovery came responsibility and an obligation for stewardship.
Randy and Gary came to us, and the Kartchner family came to us to figure out a way to preserve the cave. And they knew that, contrary to what might be logical, you can't really preserve a resource entirely through private means. You have to engage a public agency to really protect the cave. It needed 24-hour, round-the-clock protection. And it was really the role of the Nature Conservancy to serve as a facilitator or convener of the various parties to figure out what the right long-term solution was for Kartchner Caverns. It turned out at that time that Ken Travis was the new director of Arizona State Parks. And he recognized this as really a world-class resource that deserved the kind of protection that we, as Arizonans and Arizona State Parks, could give it.
September of 1988, it officially became a state park, and we've been working on it ever since to try to get the public into it. The first 4 years were actually just studying the cave and all the things that have to be done to make sure that we don't dry out the cave. It's a wet cave just underneath the Arizona desert. So what we have to do is to make sure that we don't breach that above ground and underground environment. So it's taken 11 years, now it'll be close to 12 years by the time we get it done and get it open to the public. It's been a long, arduous process. When Randy and Gary came in here in 1974, there were no footprints in here. In essence, there were footprints on the moon before there were footprints in Kartchner Caverns. So we had to take it and keep it pristine and to keep it in a way that they discovered it.
This is a self-contained environment, but there's more than just rock formations. There's bat colonies, and there's little critters that live in the bat guano. There's been Indian habitation on the surface. The cave is a story in of itself, and I think that it's important for us to protect things in their entirety.
One thing people need to understand about a cave is that it's a non-renewable resource. If you break these formations, they don't come back. I mean, it's certainly not on any time scale that we're used to. We're trying to preserve this thing for our descendants, for future generations, so that other people, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, can come in and see this place pretty much as we saw it.
The moisture inside comes from rainfall in the desert above. It percolates down into the cave. That helps keep the inside at nearly 99% humidity and a constant 68 degrees. It's just a few inches a year, but enough to keep what's within the cave growing.
In many cases, you can get right up close to these bacon formations and see how they're formed. You can see that the drop of water will just follow this edge down, depositing a little bit of calcite as it goes down until it reaches the end and drops off. Each time the water comes down, it deposits a little bit of calcite, extending the width of the bacon. Kartchner Caverns is still somewhat in its infancy geologically. Millions of years ago, Arizona was a shallow sea. As that shallow sea receded, it left a block of limestone, escabrosa limestone. That limestone block slid down onto the whetstones during these receding seas. As the water table continued to recede, it hollowed out that block of limestone, creating the void that is Kartchner Caverns. Limestone will dissolve in water. It was created by water and sea life and will dissolve in that water too. And as that water rushed through, it created almost an underground stream or river that carved these rocks, creating these voids. Just right next to us, this area of flowstone is dry. It's not growing right now. Doesn't mean it's done growing, but it's not growing right now. And just right next to it, you'll see this fresh, new, wet flowstone as it continues to grow and cover these rocks. And it just covers this entire wall, probably about 30 yards long. And some of that calcite is a foot thick, and others of it is just paper thin, coating over these rocks. And it just continues all along here. And you can see some of the formations, the drapery formations, as they're forming and growing longer, eventually going to cover all of this wall. There are still formations forming all the time. As we're standing here, we'll even get hit with drops of water as the water continues to percolate through.
It wasn't water that helped enlarge the human access to the cave. It was dynamite, drill bits, and determination.
We have a crew up here barring down. The cave has had over 500,000 years to come to equilibrium. The tunnel, it's only 3 years old. It was blasted open, and there's a lot of cracks residing left in the tunnel, and some of the rock is still loose, hasn't come down yet. In the development of the tunnels, we use traditional mining techniques, jackleg drill, drill a 4 to 6 foot deep hole, pack it with powder, fracture the rock, scoop it out with a loader. 3 years ago, our crews first came through a little breakthrough in the tunnels right up on the overlook. Mine crews worked all day long, and in the evening we brought our crews through and built the first temporary airlock inside to prevent air from being lost. We have 1,300 feet of tunnels in our complex. On a good day, we were able to get about 6 feet of production. Blasted rock, muck, moved out. This layer right here is shotcrete, gunite, and it keeps the loose rock in place. Up around this corner, we had to use the steel sets. And steel sets are reinforced concrete walls. The walls are 16, 18 inches thick. What we're doing in here is applying a coating over the very rough concrete and steel work It'll protect the steel from rusting out. This is where we were lucky to get 3 or 4 feet of production a week. And you can see on this side just how wide that reinforced wall is. The caves fared very well through our tunnel development project. Again, if I look over my shoulder, where we first broke through, right next to the tunnel door, where the tunneling came through, is the Butterscotch Formation. We have photographs of it before. We have photographs of it now. No impact. Once we broke through with the tunneling and got inside the cave, we did not have this level pad that you see here. We had to make level pads and make them on grade. Tools of choice for this job, the bucket and the wheelbarrow. Our greatest challenge on a daily basis is to blend the technology of construction, which is codified in any number of books, in engineering principles, and then to blend it into the cave where there's a different set of rules, and to try to come up with something that makes sense, that's structurally strong,
I got it run.
but yet fits
My only problem is I don't
inside
know
a
what to
very
connect
organic
here.
site. We can't patch anything here. Everything has to fit right the first time.
As all parents know, providing tender loving care is never ending. 22 environmental monitoring stations are interspersed around the cave. They measure relative humidity and evaporation rates to ensure that folks don't love the cave to death.
This is one of the most intimate parts of the cave tour. Visitors will be right up close to the walls and to the ceiling of the cave. Rocks will be all around you. In fact, in some of these passages, it got so tight that we had to remove a feature with a rock saw and transplant it elsewhere so people could get through this narrow passage. There's a lot of places in Kartchner where you can get close to the features, and in this case, you can actually watch them growing. This is a large rock covered with flowstone, and the flowstone's a butterscotch color. But at the ends of these little tiny stalactites are a drop of water. And when that drop of water drops off, it is leaving a little bit of calcite on the end, making that formation longer and creating something down below. And over here, you can see the water continuing to drip. These are all wet and formations and continuing to grow. In fact, that's how bacon begins, with just those little strips. This is the throne room, and it's about 100 yards across. And from floor to ceiling, at any one point, could be 100 feet. A football field would fit in this room. They called this the throne room because this is where Kubla Khan lives, from the Samuel Taylor Coleridge poem, Xanadu. This is Kubla Khan, this 55-foot column out here. Well, a column is what happens when a stalactite, which is forming from the ceiling, meets up with a stalagmite forming from the floor. As water drips down, it'll leave calcite deposits forming the stalactite. As it reaches the end of the stalactite, it'll drop to the floor and still carry some of that calcite with it, and in which case it'll start forming a formation on the floor. Well, in about 200,000 years, like Kubla Khan, they could actually reach in the middle and start forming a column. All the formations are calcite. It's the impurities in it that gives it the color. Soda straws are stalactites that are forming from the center out. They are actually hollow in the center, and the drop of water, rather than going on the outside of the formation, goes down the center. And then it clings on the end, depositing a little layer of calcite before it drips off to the floor. And that's how a soda straw is formed. Once that is plugged up, the water has to find a new way to go around, and a stalactite starts to form after that. We age the formations by determining how long it takes a stalactite or soda straw to grow. They grow a 1/4 inch every 100 years. Well, a 21-foot long soda straw at a 1/4 inch per every 100 years, about 200,000 years old. And that's how we're kind of determining the age of the formations here at Kartchner. The fried egg formation is a stalagmite, and it's usually close to the floor and not very tall. It's a constant drip of water with some impurities in it that create that egg yolk sort of look that makes it resemble a fried egg. This is a great place to see how formations are formed. You can actually watch the water dripping onto this large rock, coming down, depositing calcite until it reaches the edge. Much like water spilled on a table reaches the edge, it comes to the edge finally and will drip off. A halectite is a formation inside the cave that's a little hard to describe. It's created by water, but it's not created by falling drops of water like a stalactite or a stalagmite. It seems to grow at odd angles. In fact, they'll even squiggle. As you stand on these elevated walkways, you're right up front to drapery formations, which are a lot like a bacon formation, except they undulate and look like draperies in your house.
Furnishings have something to do with what turns a house into a home. But it's more personal than that. It's the bond you make during a visit.
I talk to the cave. I imagine that the cave is perhaps superstitiously again, that the cave is a being that is sort of directing all this. I don't literally believe that, but metaphorically, poetically, I treat it that way.
It felt like a dream to us, and like we were dreaming.
Water dripped on you, you got cave kisses. If you stand under it, and the water will drip through the formations and land on you.
Then
it's a cave kiss.
Cave kiss.
Clubicon 58 feet tall.
That is as high as 5-story building.
It starts out like sort of like a flowstone, but it's really like a column, and it's very many colors, like tans and whites and browns and yellows, and it's just really cool.
It was awesome. Cool.
We have sat in the throne room when people have finished, when the visual presentation is finished, and they have tears in their eyes. They're so moved. And I guess that's very similar to the experience that we have when we've sat there by ourselves, with the lights out, just experiencing the cave. It's the same feeling.
It's a very emotional experience for a lot of people here.
There's this butterscotch rock. It's round and it has little formations going down. And it's butterscotch, and it looks like you just want to eat it. And there's a fried egg, and there's this bacon strips hanging from the ceiling. Real bacon, it looks like, and it's just made me hungry.
You've seen something beautiful. Just remember that the world is real beautiful and sensitive, and it's all going to be your responsibility to take care of things like that.
It'd be nice to think that people have become a little smarter in the eons we've spent exploring. Nowadays, when we discover a treasure like Kartchner Caverns, we know that it's precious. So we treat it with great care. Entering this special world is like touching a fragile nest. We've learned that our involvement, even just our presence, can upset the delicate balance in nature. This time we're being especially careful, so that Kartchner Caverns can still be a marvel hundreds of years from now.